What's up everyone? In this video we're gonna review my 5 best games with brilliant moves from Dead 6 Road to 1200 Elo. As you can see I have reached 1200 Elo. So let's get into this video. So this is the first game with 2 brilliant moves. I played Jababa Lantern E4 but he played pawn to E5 and I didn't took because I pre-moved knight to C3. He took my pawn, I took back, he developed his knight with tempo. I pulled my queen back and he developed his other knight. I developed my bishop. He pinned my knight, but I just pushed pawn to e3, open diagonal for my light to square bishop, and he just took my knight and yeah, I took back. He castled. I developed my other bishop. He pushed his pawn to d4. I pinned him. He developed his light square bishop to a closed diagonal, which was not a very good move. And then I developed my knight. I played knight to d4, so he can't push this d5 pawn to open up diagonal for his bishop. Just traded the knights, which was good for me, undoubling my pawns. And then he gave me this check. This was a mistake, but he missed, and he just played this move. And he gave me a free knight. I took back happily with the bishop. Hit f pawn to f5 and I tried to manual cancel. He played bishop to f7. I didn't got this move. He was planning to give me a check by putting his bishop on h5 square. So I just attacked his queen. Gave me a check. I blocked with the pawn. He gave me another check. I just moved my king and he tried to save his queen by putting it on f8 square. I just traded the rooks and tried to secure my king more. He played queen to f6 and this is a blender which he missed to punish. Here he was supposed to take pawn on d4 with a check and he could have won this bishop but he missed it. And instead he took the pawn on c4 and I took back with the check and then developed my rook. Now he took but late and I blundered again. Here he was supposed to play rook to e2 which he missed of course and he tried to pin my bishop to my queen but I played the brilliant ignoring the threat and took the pawn on c7. Here if we take with the rook it's mate. If he takes with the queen it's the same thing. I will take his queen. He can't take back because it will be mate. So he just pushed this pawn and I played another brilliant by sacrificing my queen and taking the pawn on f4. Again he can't take. It will be mate in 2. So he just moved his rook and then I kicked his queen. He attacked my rook and guarded my rook. He played queen to g6. I offered a rook trade. He accepted and gave some air to his king. Gave him a check. He blocked with the queen and I happily traded the queens off the board. And then we were in the end game. So very easy to win for me. We traded the bishops and yeah, it's winning. Here, he just resigned. The evidence of the game that I played that game. You can see this was brilliant, second brilliant. And yeah, it is right. Okay, so this is the second best game of day 6 road to 1200 elo. I played Jabba London as usual, d4, he played d5. I played knight to c3, this time I didn't pre-moved it. He developed his knight and guarded his pawn on d5. I developed my bishop on f4. He blocked my knight, so my knight can't come on b5. I developed my other knight on f3. He played bishop to g4, I don't know why. I kicked his bishop, just took my knight, which is a good move for me because by taking the bishop on f3, I am opening my diagonal for knight to square bishop. He opened his diagonal for his dark square bishop. I pushed pawn on g4, pinned my knight. I kicked his knight, moved his knight, and attacked my bishop. I just unpinned my knight, castled, and I pushed pawn on f4. This is a very tricky move. It's a discovered attack on his knight, but he took my knight. I took back with the pawn. He guarded his knight. I attacked again with knight to square bishop. He put his queen on e7. I don't know why. Just took his knight. He took me back with the pawn. I took back with my queen, and he developed his last knight. And I put my queen on g4 to push my pawns. He put his queen on d6. I don't know why. I pushed my pawn. He pushed his pawn. I pushed my pawn again. He took my pawn. I ignored it and played queen to h5. He gave me a check. I moved my king, took my pawn and attacked my bishop. I ignored it and played the brilliant move queen to h6. If we will take my bishop, it will be mate. And yeah, he took my bishop. I don't know why. And yeah, it's mate. There were two lessons in this game. First lesson, don't do those trades which make your opponent position better. Here, he took my knight and made my position better after I took back with pawn on e2 to open diagonal for my knight to square bishop, which will be easy for me to develop now. And second lesson was here, don't guard your pieces with king side pawns. He didn't have any options rather than defending with king side pawn, but I am telling you guys so you can't do this mistake. Here his knight was just trapped, that's why he did it, but in other cases you should not guard your pieces with king side pawns because after trades your king will become very weak. So yeah, these are two lessons in this game. This is the third game with brilliant move from day 6 road to 1200 elo. I played Jopava London d4, he played d5, I developed my knight on c3, developed his knight on f6, guarding his pawn on d5. I developed my bishop on f4, he developed his bishop on f5. I played a waiting move and also opening diagonal for my light square bishop. And yeah, he played knight to c6, and I went for the Jabava attack. He striked in the center with his e pawn on e5. I took with the bishop. He took back with the knight. I took back with pawn and kicked his knight. And he just played knight to e4. I sacrificed my queen. Brilliant move. I took my queen. I gave him a check. He moved his king and I pick up the queen. He developed his other bishop on c5. I played rook to d1, planning to give him a discover check. But yeah, he just played the wrong move. Put his king by putting his king on e8. I gave him a check and he resigned, which was a fork. So I called this a waiting move because I directly can't go for the Jaffa attack. Otherwise, he had have played knight to a6 and stopped my attack. so which will have been useless. That's why I played this waiting move so he can develop his knight to c6, and then I can go for that. Rather than that, you can't go for that. Okay, so this is the fourth game with the brilliant move from day 6 row to 1200 elo. So here I went for Jababa London again, but he played pawn to c5. I took the free pawn and he attacked my pawn, but yeah, I just developed my knight on c3. Took the pawn on c5. I developed my other knight on f3. He bring out his queen early, which you are not supposed to do. He was planning to give me a check on f2, which I have found, and I just blocked it. He developed his knight on f6. I took the free pawn on e5. He attacked my knight, attacked his queen with my knight. He played queen to c6. It was a very big mistake because there was a brilliant move, and I found that brilliant sacrifice of the knight by putting it on e5. If he takes my knight with his pawn, I will pin his queen to the king. And he took my knight and I pinned his queen to the king. He attacked my queen, but I took his queen with a check, and he took my bishop with his pawn. I blocked his bishop attack on my queen, pulled back his bishop on e6. I castled, he castled, I forced his knight and his bishop, and he played knight to d5, completely hanging his bishop, and I took his free bishop. He took my pawn on e3, thinking it will be a fork, but yeah, he hangs his knight, and I took free knight. Here he attacks my rook on f1. I tried to go extraordinary, but yeah, I didn't. So that I will just, it will be a knight trade, and yeah, he did the trade, and he also got a free rook, and I took the bishop, my other rook. He attacked my queen, hanging his pawn. I took his free pawn on c6, and he attacked my queen again. I pulled back my queen on a secure square on e4. He pushed his pawn on f6, and I pushed my pawn on f4. He tried to plan some discover attack, but yeah, I found it and gave him a check on d5. He moved his king on h8. I took the pawn. He took back with the rook, attacking my queen. I pulled back my queen on d3, and he pushed his pawn on h6, and I took free pawn on a7. He doubled his rooks. I just pushed my pawn on c4, and he attacked my bishop. I pulled back my bishop, kicking his rook. He doubled his rooks again, and I pushed my pawn. He took free pawn. I pushed my c pawn again. He takes my pawn, so I just defended it, and he played rook to a5. I kicked his rook, and he pinned my bishop to my queen. I offered him a rook trade, which he didn't accept it, and attacked my pawn on c6. I defended my pawn once again by pushing my b4 pawn to b5, and he played rook to e8. I pushed my pawn. He doubled his rook by putting his other rook on e6. I just made a queen and pinned his e8 rook to his king. He gave me a check. I moved my king to f2, and he pulled his rook back on e7. I took his rook with my other queen, and he took back with his rook, and I pushed my pawn on b6. He pushed his pawn and hangs his pawn, and I took that pawn and gave him a check. He moved his king on g8. I gave him another check with my queen. He moved his king once again on f7, and I pushed my pawn. He blocked the pawn and attacked the pawn. And I here sacrificed my bishop to open his king so I can give him checks. And he took my bishop, and I gave him another check, and he moved his king to e7. I forked his king and his rook and picked up the free rook on b8, and he attacked my rook. I gave him another check and then another check, and afterwards checkmated him. Okay, so the lesson in this game was never to put your queen on the same diagonal as your king and on the same file as your king, so your opponent can't pin your queen to your king. And also to calculate your opponent moves, that what your opponent is thinking and gonna play. Like here, he didn't calculate that what I want to play on the next move and what the sacrifice was for, and for that he missed this game. So calculate your moves and your opponent's move too. Okay, so this is the fifth and last game from day 6 to 1200 Elo with a brilliant move. This game was played right after the fourth game with brilliant. So here my opponent played d4, I played d5, he developed his bishop on f4, I developed my knight on c6, he developed his knight on c3, I prevented his knight from coming on d5 by pushing my pawn on a6, and he pushed his pawn on e3, opening his diagonal for his light square bishop. I developed my light square bishop on f5. He developed his light square bishop and attacked my light square bishop, so I protected it by pushing pawn on e6. And he took my bishop, I took back with pawn. He attacked my pawn with his queen, I guarded it with my knight. And he developed his other knight on f3, so I guarded my pawn once again. And he pinned my knight. I kicked his bishop by pushing my h pawn. He maintained the pin, so I had to unpin by pushing my g pawn and attacked his bishop. He pulled back his bishop on g3, and I played queen to d7, planning to castle queen side because my king side is weak. And he attacked my queen. I took his knight with my knight, and he took back with the bishop, attacking my rook on h8. So I moved my rook on g8, and he pushed pawn on f3, planning to play probably g4, and I offered him a trade of bishop because his bishop is very strong. He didn't accept it, so I castled. He castled too, and I pushed pawn on h5. He moved his king on b1, and I attacked his bishop, and he pulled his bishop on f2. I put my knight on c6, and he put his knight on a4, and I attacked his queen, and it's also discovered attack on his knight. He guarded and attacked my knight, so I guarded it. It's not the best way to guard. Okay, so here he attacked my queen. I just moved my queen on c6, and he attacked my knight. I put my knight on a6. He took my knight, and I took his knight with my queen. He played rook to d3. I put my bishop on f6, and he put his rook on c3, and I pushed pawn on g4. He didn't took and played rook to c5, and I took his pawn. He took back. I attacked his bishop. He played bishop to e1, attacking my pawn. And this was probably a blunder. And he made a blunder too. Was supposed to take with the bishop. I just secured my queen by putting in on c3. He attacked again. I put my queen on e6. He played bishop to b4, planning a discover attack on my queen. So I just played queen to b6. He took pawn on d5, and I traded the rooks and took back with the queen, and I took a free pawn on e3. He took my pawn with the check, and I moved my king on d8. He played rook to d1. I took the free pawn on d4 and took the free pawn on f7, and I attacked and guarded my bishop. He gave me a check. I moved my king to a7, and now he attacked my bishop and guarded his bishop. So I just took his bishop, and he took my bishop with his pawn, which was a planter.
That's right, you guessed it. The rook!
And here he played rook to d2. I gave him a check. I was supposed to give him a check with my pawn, but yeah, I missed it. And he played king to c2. I gave him another check with my queen, and he played king to d3. And there is mate in one. In this game, I blundered by playing rook to e2, and he has well blundered by taking my pawn with his rook. He was supposed to take with the bishop, but he took with the rook, and I missed the tactic. And it was supposed to be by taking his bishop. When he will take my rook, I could have won a rook. So this is a tactic I wanted to show you guys. In day 6 road to 1200 ELO, I played total of 56 games and won 30 games, drawn 4 games and lost 22 games, and I achieved the goal of 1200 ELO. So yeah, at 1200 ELO, this was my first voiceover video, and next video will be on Blitz Road to 1200 ELO, and another video will be on Bullet Road to 1200 ELO. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and like and subscribe. Stay tuned with my journey till I reach 2K ELO. Thanks for your time. Bye bye.